Royal
If we are
Guard
discovered,
RAIDED
they will
Camilla's
know
personal
everything.
property and took back
Are
the
you
late
certain you
Queen's missing
understand the
heirlooms.
implications?
Unlike the flashing cameras and public appearances that often dominated royal life, she preferred the calm and private spaces of her own estate. Her home was not just a place to live. It was a sanctuary filled with memories, treasures, and stories that spanned generations. Every piece of furniture, every painting, and every small ornament seemed to have a purpose, a history, or a connection to the royal family. Camilla spent hours tending to her rooms, arranging objects just so, and making sure that everything reflected both her taste and the legacy she cared for deeply. Over the years, she had become the unofficial guardian of many items that belonged to the late queen. Some were delicate jewelry pieces, sparkling with history and sentimental value, while others were documents, letters, or small personal objects that held meaning beyond their appearance. Camilla believed that keeping these heirlooms safe was not just a matter of duty, but a personal responsibility. She often thought about the late queen, imagining how she would have wanted these items preserved. It was a role that Camilla accepted quietly, without fanfare, and one that few people truly understood. The days at her estate were typically peaceful. Camilla had a routine that included morning walks through the gardens, checking on her staff, and spending quiet afternoons reading or reviewing letters and documents. She enjoyed these moments of solitude, finding a sense of calm in the predictable rhythm of her life. Yet even in her peaceful routine, Camilla was aware that the world around her could change without warning. The palace, the media, and the public were never far from her thoughts. She knew that living in the royal family came with expectations and scrutiny, but she had grown accustomed to balancing privacy with her responsibilities. One morning, however, the calm was broken. News began to circulate quietly among palace aides and staff that several heirlooms from the late queen's collection were missing. The information traveled slowly at first, whispered in corridors and over private phone calls. Camilla had no idea that anyone suspected her or her household. She was still in her morning routine, sipping tea by the window and enjoying the gentle sunlight that streamed into her sitting room, when her aide approached with an expression of concern. "Camilla," the aide began softly, there's been some concern about the Queen's heirlooms." Camilla looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice calm but curious. "They were noted as missing in the recent inventory." "Officials are reviewing the situation," the aide continued. Camilla's heart sank slightly, but she remained composed. She had always taken the responsibility of safeguarding these items seriously, and she could not imagine any reason for them to be unaccounted for. "I see," she said quietly. "And what are the next steps?" The aide hesitated, then explained that palace authorities would likely be involved in verifying the inventory and ensuring the items were located. Camilla listened carefully, trying to process the information without panicking. She understood the importance of the situation. These heirlooms were not just valuable objects. They were symbols of history, continuity, and the trust placed in her by the late queen. Over the next few hours, a sense of unease settled over the estate. Staff members moved about more cautiously than usual, and the normally cheerful chatter in the hallways was replaced by quiet murmurs and whispered speculations. Camilla spent her day reviewing the locations where the heirlooms had been kept. Each piece had been carefully stored, often in places designed to protect them from damage or misplacement. As she checked each area, she could not find any reason why the items would be missing. Every lock was secure, every box in place, and yet the report had been made. The tension was not just about the missing objects themselves. Camilla knew that any misunderstanding could be magnified in the public eye. A misplaced piece of jewelry or a miscounted item could quickly become a headline, turning private concerns into public controversy. She had always been aware of the delicate balance between privacy and duty in her life, and this situation brought that balance into sharp focus. It was a reminder that even the most careful planning and attention to detail could not completely shield her from scrutiny. As the day turned to evening, Camilla reflected on the late queen's life and the many moments they had shared. The heirlooms were not just valuable. They represented memories, achievements, and milestones in the royal family's history. Losing them, or even the suggestion that they were lost, felt like a personal failure, even though she had done everything she could to protect them. She thought about the Queen's kindness, her wisdom, and her guidance, and Camilla felt a renewed sense of duty. Whatever the outcome, she would ensure that the legacy of the late Queen remained intact. That night, Camilla did not sleep as she usually would. She walked slowly through the quiet rooms of her estate, checking the locks on display cases and reviewing the catalog of items. Every detail mattered, every small object held significance. In the silence, she imagined the late Queen watching over her, trusting her to safeguard these treasures. The weight of that responsibility was heavy, but it was also a source of motivation. Camilla resolved that she would cooperate fully with any review or investigation, confident that the truth would emerge and that the heirlooms would be found safe. Over the next few days, news began to spread more widely. The palace confirmed that certain heirlooms were unaccounted for and that officials would conduct a careful review of Camilla's personal property. The story started quietly without sensational headlines, but it carried an undercurrent of tension. Staff and aides moved carefully, aware that the world beyond the estate was watching, even if the public did not yet know the details. Camilla, meanwhile, maintained her usual composure, balancing her personal duties with the need to respond to the official inquiry. During this time, Camilla reflected on the nature of trust and responsibility. Being part of the royal family was not only about appearances or ceremonial duties. It was about safeguarding history, protecting traditions, and making choices that respected the legacy of those who had come before. The missing heirlooms incident was a test of that responsibility, a reminder that even the most private moments and spaces could be subject to scrutiny. She thought about the challenges of her role, the expectations placed upon her, and the delicate balance between personal life and public duty. Camilla also considered the people around her, her aides, staff, and close family members. Everyone had a role to play in preserving the estate and ensuring that her actions aligned with the expectations of the palace. She took time to speak with each member of her household, listening to their concerns and reassuring them that the situation would be resolved. Her leadership was quiet but firm, emphasizing calm, patience, and careful attention to detail. In these conversations, she reminded herself that the investigation was not an accusation, but a necessary step in maintaining the integrity of the royal collection. By the end of the week, Camilla had developed a plan. She would cooperate fully with officials, provide detailed accounts of where each heirloom had been kept, and assist in verifying the inventory. At the same time, she maintained her routine, knowing that stability and calmness were crucial during uncertain times. She continued to spend her mornings in the gardens, her afternoons reviewing documents, and her evenings reflecting on the lessons of history. Every moment was a reminder that being part of the royal family involved more than appearances. It required careful thought, deliberate action, and unwavering dedication. Throughout this period, Camilla also found comfort in the small joys of her life. She walked among the flowers, listened to the birds, and occasionally played the piano in one of the quiet rooms of her estate. These moments of peace reminded her that even in challenging times, there was room for reflection, creativity, and connection with the simple beauty of life. They were reminders that her role was not only about responsibility, but also about nurturing a sense of continuity and care for both people and history. As the investigation approached, Camilla remained poised, understanding that the truth would reveal itself. The missing heirlooms were not lost. They were simply awaiting proper documentation and verification. In her mind, she pictured the late Queen's smile, imagining approval and reassurance. Camilla felt confident that the outcome would affirm her dedication and careful stewardship, even as she prepared for the scrutiny that would inevitably come with public attention. By the end of this chapter in her life, Camilla had navigated the early stages of the investigation with patience, grace, and determination. She had demonstrated not only her loyalty to the royal legacy, but also her ability to remain composed under pressure. The peaceful estate, once filled only with quiet routines, had become a place where history, responsibility, and public duty intersected. Camilla understood that the coming days would require continued vigilance, careful communication, and a steadfast commitment to preserving both the heirlooms and the trust placed in her. Even as she prepared for the next steps, she remained true to herself. Camilla's dedication was not motivated by fear or obligation alone. It was fueled by respect for history, love for her family, and a deep sense of personal responsibility. In the quiet of her estate, surrounded by treasures of the past, she felt a connection to generations of women who had upheld the legacy of the royal family. And with that connection came a renewed sense of purpose, courage, and readiness to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The morning sun rose gently over Camilla's estate, casting soft light across the manicured gardens and stone pathways. Everything looked as it always did, calm and orderly, but beneath the serene surface, tension had begun to weave its way through the household. Camilla moved through her morning routine as usual, greeting the staff and checking her correspondence, but there was a quiet anticipation in the air. She could sense that today might be different, though she did not yet know exactly how. By mid-morning, word had spread that a team from the Royal Guard would be visiting the estate. The announcement was made with careful diplomacy. Nothing in the tone suggested accusation, but it was clear that the purpose was serious. Camilla felt a mixture of curiosity and resolve. She had always known that her role as custodian of the late Queen's heirlooms could involve scrutiny, but seeing the plans in motion made the situation feel immediate and personal. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to remain composed and cooperative. The arrival of the Royal Guard was precise and orderly, as one would expect from professionals trained in protocol and procedure. A small group of officers arrived at the estate gates, their uniforms crisp and immaculate, reflecting the formality and dignity of their position. They were escorted through the gardens and into the main house, where Camilla had prepared to meet them with courtesy and openness. She understood that their task was not personal. It was a responsibility to the crown, and she intended to treat it with the respect it deserved. As the officers entered the estate, Camilla's staff moved quietly, offering assistance without disrupting the formal proceedings. The atmosphere was calm yet tense, a careful balance between routine and the unusual circumstances of the day. Camilla herself walked alongside the team, explaining the layout of her home and the locations where heirlooms had been carefully stored. Every corner of the house had been organized for both functionality and preservation, and she was proud of the effort that had gone into maintaining it. The Royal Guard began their methodical examination, checking each room with careful attention to detail. They inspected display cases, safes, and storage boxes, taking notes and cataloging each item with precision. Camilla watched silently, answering questions and offering explanations when needed. The process was thorough, designed to ensure that every heirloom was accounted for and preserved. She understood the importance of their work, and despite the natural tension, she appreciated their professionalism and dedication. As the hours passed, the team continued their systematic search. Camilla moved among them calmly, occasionally stopping to provide historical context or describe how certain items had been used by the late Queen. She found herself sharing small stories that brought the objects to life. A delicate necklace that had been worn at a state dinner, a finely embroidered handkerchief gifted for a royal celebration, a small diary detailing a quiet moment in the Queen's life. These anecdotes offered insight into the history behind the items and reinforced Camilla's role as their guardian. The staff worked alongside the Royal Guard, guiding them through the estate and ensuring that every item was handled with care. Servants whispered to one another, sharing both curiosity and concern. It was clear that the event had captured everyone's attention, turning a normal day into one of high significance. Camilla moved calmly through the rooms, demonstrating both knowledge and confidence, even as the questions and inspections continued. At one point, the team paused before a large cabinet in Camilla's private study. The cabinet contained several of the most valuable and sentimental heirlooms, each carefully wrapped and stored. Camilla explained how each item had been preserved, describing the care taken to prevent damage and maintain the integrity of the pieces. The officers listened intently, nodding and taking notes, showing respect for both the items and the stories behind them. Camilla felt a sense of quiet pride. She had always treated her responsibility seriously, and it was reassuring to see that the effort was acknowledged. Throughout the morning, Camilla noticed subtle shifts in the atmosphere. While the proceedings were formal, there was also a human element present. Officers asked questions with curiosity, staff members exchanged glances of cautious interest, and Camilla herself reflected on the weight of the day. The inspection was not just a procedural matter. It was a reminder of the importance of her role and the trust placed in her. She realized that the presence of the royal guard symbolized both authority and care, a combination that required her full attention and cooperation. As the search continued, Camilla took moments to step back and observe. The estate was filled with history, not only in the heirlooms themselves, but also in the very walls and furniture that had witnessed generations of royal life. She thought about the late queen, imagining how she might have approached the situation with calm confidence and grace. Camilla drew strength from these reflections, reminding herself that her composure and careful attention were essential not only for the immediate task, but for the preservation of legacy and trust. By midday, the royal guard had moved through nearly every room in the estate. Their work was slow and deliberate, reflecting the seriousness of their duty. Camilla offered tea and light refreshments to maintain a sense of hospitality, emphasizing that while the inspection was important, it could be conducted with respect and courtesy. The officers appreciated the gesture, recognizing that cooperation and transparency were key to the process. During the inspection, Camilla noticed that some of the heirlooms appeared to spark particular interest. A delicate brooch, shaped like a flower and set with tiny gemstones, drew questions about its origins and significance. Camilla recounted how it had been gifted to the late queen on a special occasion, sharing details of the ceremony and the people involved. These stories brought warmth to the formal process, reminding everyone present that the items were more than possessions. They were pieces of living history, filled with memories and meaning. The presence of the royal guard also prompted Camilla to consider the broader implications of her role. As custodian of the heirlooms, she was responsible not only for physical preservation, but also for maintaining the trust of the crown and the public. Each step of the inspection was an opportunity to demonstrate care, diligence, and integrity. She realized that the scrutiny, while initially unsettling, offered a chance to reaffirm her commitment to these responsibilities. As afternoon approached, the pace of the inspection did not waver. The officers continued to move carefully through the estate, opening drawers, checking cabinets, and verifying the condition of each item. Camilla remained at their side, answering questions, offering guidance, and ensuring that the process was conducted with the utmost respect. The staff continued to provide assistance, their nervous energy tempered by the professionalism of the team. Camilla herself felt a mixture of pride and relief, pride in the way the estate had been maintained, and relief that the process was orderly and respectful. During one particularly quiet moment, Camilla found herself reflecting on the passage of time. Many of the heirlooms had been in the royal family for decades, some for even longer. Each carried with it the stories of those who had lived before, their triumphs, challenges, and personal moments preserved in tangible form. Camilla felt a deep connection to this history, understanding that her role was not temporary. It was part of a continuum of care and respect that stretched back through generations. The royal guard, meanwhile, worked with both thoroughness and discretion. They handled each item with care, ensuring that nothing was damaged or misplaced. Their professionalism reinforced Camilla's confidence that the situation, while unusual, was being managed with respect for both the heirlooms and the household. She noted their meticulous approach and felt reassured that the process was as much about preservation as verification. As the day progressed, Camilla began to notice small signs of progress. Items that had been reported as missing were being located, carefully documented, and returned to secure storage. Each discovery brought a sense of relief, a small confirmation that her careful stewardship had been effective. The tension in the household eased slightly, replaced by a cautious optimism that the situation would be resolved satisfactorily. By late afternoon, the royal guard had nearly completed their inspection. Camilla took a moment to step into the gardens, enjoying the fresh air and quiet beauty. She reflected on the day's events, considering both the challenges and the lessons learned. She recognized that while the inspection had been intense, it had also been an opportunity to demonstrate transparency, cooperation, and dedication. In these moments of reflection, she felt a renewed sense of purpose and confidence in her role. As evening approached, the officers concluded their work. They reviewed their findings with Camilla, noting the care taken in storing and preserving each heirloom. While some items required additional verification, the overall report was positive, confirming that the estate had been managed with diligence and respect. Camilla expressed her gratitude, emphasizing her commitment to the continued care of the royal collection. After the royal guard departed, a sense of calm returned to the estate. The staff moved about with quiet relief, and Camilla herself took time to review the events of the day. She reflected on the importance of composure, preparation, and cooperation, understanding that these qualities had guided her through the inspection successfully. The heirlooms were safe, and the trust placed in her had been affirmed through both her actions and the formal review. As night fell, Camilla walked through the rooms one final time, checking that everything was in order. The sun had set, leaving a soft glow across the estate, and a sense of peace returned. She thought about the late queen and the legacy that had been entrusted to her care, feeling a quiet satisfaction that the responsibilities had been met with integrity and respect. The day had been challenging, but it had also reinforced her role as guardian, historian, and steward of a remarkable heritage. Camilla knew that the following days would bring additional reviews and conversations, but she felt prepared. She had met the challenge of the Royal Guard's inspection with composure, cooperation, and grace. The experience had been a reminder of the balance between duty and personal responsibility, between public trust and private care. And in that balance, Camilla found both reassurance and renewed dedication to the task she had long embraced. The day after the Royal Guard completed their inspection, Camilla awoke to a sense of cautious optimism. The atmosphere in her estate had settled into a quieter rhythm, though a subtle tension lingered. She knew that while the inspection had gone smoothly, the next step, official reporting and public acknowledgement, would bring new challenges. The missing heirlooms were not just objects. They carried history, sentiment, and immense symbolic value. The truth about their whereabouts would soon emerge, and Camilla prepared herself for the reactions that might follow. By mid-morning, an official message arrived from the palace. It was brief but formal, requesting Camilla's presence for a private review of the findings. She read the note carefully, noting the tone of courtesy and procedure. There was no suggestion of accusation, only a request for clarity and confirmation. Camilla gathered herself, reflecting on the events of the previous day. She had watched the Royal Guard handle each heirloom with care, and she was confident that the items had been properly stored all along. Still, the upcoming review would mark the moment when the private handling of these treasures would transition into official acknowledgement. Camilla arrived at the palace quietly, escorted by her trusted aides. The corridors were familiar yet carried a different energy today. She could feel the subtle hum of anticipation among palace staff and officials. Courtiers greeted her with polite smiles, their eyes revealing curiosity and interest. Camilla maintained her composure, walking with measured steps and a serene expression. She understood that perception was as important as action, and she had long learned the importance of projecting calm confidence in moments of scrutiny. The review began in a private chamber, designed for formal discussions yet comfortable enough to encourage open dialogue. Officials presented their findings systematically, detailing each step of the Royal Guard's inspection, including the locations where the heirlooms had been stored, the condition of the items, and the meticulous documentation that accompanied each piece. Camilla listened attentively, confirming details and clarifying points where necessary. She emphasized that her priority had always been the protection and preservation of the Queen's legacy, and her statements were met with nods of understanding. As the review progressed, it became clear that the missing heirlooms were not missing at all. They had been carefully secured within Camilla's private collection, stored in places that prioritized preservation and security. Some items had been moved temporarily for maintenance or cataloging, and this had contributed to the confusion in the official inventory. Camilla explained each decision, detailing the reasoning behind her careful handling and storage practices. She spoke calmly, providing historical context and practical explanations that highlighted her diligence and responsibility. The revelation brought a sense of relief to the room. Officials recognized that there had been no negligence or misconduct, only a temporary discrepancy caused by the careful and protective measures Camilla had implemented. They acknowledged her dedication and praised her thorough attention to detail. For Camilla, this moment was both a confirmation of her efforts and a subtle vindication of the choices she had made over the years. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her stewardship had been recognized and appreciated. Word of the review quickly spread within the palace, though it remained controlled and formal at first. Staff members whispered among themselves, sharing both curiosity and admiration for Camilla's careful handling of the heirlooms. While the public was not yet aware, palace insiders began to understand the significance of the situation. Camilla, ever composed, continued her routine while remaining available for any further clarification or questions. She understood that perception, especially in a royal context, was delicate, and she approached the situation with careful consideration. By the afternoon, news of the resolution began to leak to the media, though details were initially sparse. Headlines hinted at the discovery of the heirlooms and the clarification of their status, prompting widespread public interest. People were intrigued by the story of Camilla's private collection and her role in safeguarding items of historical and sentimental value. The narrative quickly took on a dimension of respect and admiration, as reporters highlighted her dedication, meticulous care, and sense of duty. Camilla, aware of the growing attention, remained composed, focusing on her responsibilities rather than public perception. The palace responded by issuing a formal statement, confirming that the heirlooms had been accounted for and that Camilla had acted with the utmost diligence and care. The announcement emphasized her role as a guardian of history and her commitment to preserving the legacy of the late queen. The tone was respectful, underscoring both the importance of transparency and the recognition of personal responsibility. Camilla's reputation, already grounded in respect and competence, received an additional layer of affirmation. Despite the positive outcome, Camilla understood that the situation had sparked wider discussions about royal transparency, trust, and stewardship. Conversations in the media and among the public explored themes of responsibility, legacy, and the balance between private life and official duties. Camilla paid attention to these discussions, not with defensiveness, but with thoughtful consideration. She recognized that being part of a royal household involved navigating both practical responsibilities and public perception, and she approached each conversation with careful reflection. During the following days, Camilla took the opportunity to engage with trusted advisors and aides, discussing ways to further enhance the management and documentation of the heirlooms. She suggested small improvements to storage practices, clearer labeling, and additional record-keeping to prevent future confusion. These measures were implemented smoothly, reinforcing both security and transparency. Camilla's proactive approach reflected her commitment to continuous improvement and her understanding of the responsibilities entrusted to her. At the same time, she made an effort to connect with the staff who had been involved in the inspection and review. She thanked them personally for their assistance, acknowledging the stress and uncertainty that the process might have caused. By offering gratitude and reassurance, Camilla reinforced a sense of teamwork and shared responsibility. The staff responded with respect and appreciation, recognizing her ability to lead with both authority and compassion. The resolution of the heirloom situation also offered Camilla an opportunity to reflect on the personal meaning of the items she had safeguarded. Each piece represented not only history, but also a connection to individuals and moments in time. Camilla spent quiet afternoons revisiting the collection, reviewing each item with renewed appreciation and care. She recorded additional notes, updated the catalog, and documented small stories associated with each heirloom. This process was both practical and deeply fulfilling, reinforcing her sense of purpose and connection to the past. As the media coverage continued, Camilla remained measured in her public appearances and statements. She focused on emphasizing the historical significance of the heirlooms, the importance of preservation, and her dedication to the responsibilities entrusted to her. Her demeanor was calm, respectful, and confident, highlighting both her professionalism and her personal integrity. The public response was largely positive, with many expressing admiration for her careful stewardship and thoughtful approach. In addition to managing public perception, Camilla also considered the broader lessons of the experience. She reflected on the value of preparation, transparency, and communication in maintaining trust and credibility. The temporary confusion over the heirlooms had highlighted potential vulnerabilities, but it had also provided an opportunity to demonstrate diligence, patience, and careful planning. Camilla understood that her role was as much about foresight and guidance as it was about immediate action, and she embraced this responsibility fully. The palace, too, recognized the importance of the situation in terms of both protocol and public confidence. Officials used the experience as a case study for improving inventory practices, documentation, and communication within royal estates. Camilla's cooperation and thoroughness provided a model for future situations, demonstrating the effectiveness of transparency, respect, and meticulous care. Her example underscored the value of combining tradition with thoughtful management, ensuring that historical treasures were protected while maintaining trust and accountability. Over the next few weeks, Camilla continued to focus on her personal and official responsibilities, integrating the lessons of the heirloom review into her daily routine. She maintained careful records, engaged with staff regularly, and fostered an environment of respect, professionalism, and collaboration. Each day provided an opportunity to reinforce her role as guardian of the collection, ensuring that the legacy of the late queen would remain secure and respected for years to come. In the quiet moments of reflection, Camilla also considered the personal growth she had experienced through the process. The scrutiny, while initially challenging, had strengthened her confidence, patience, and sense of purpose. She had learned to navigate complex situations with grace, balancing private care with public responsibility. The experience reinforced her belief in the importance of diligence, integrity, and calm leadership, qualities that would continue to guide her in both everyday life and extraordinary circumstances. By the time the story had fully reached the public, Camilla had become a symbol not only of diligence and respect for history, but also of composure and thoughtful leadership. Her handling of the heirlooms inspired admiration from colleagues, staff, and the public alike. The temporary uncertainty had transformed into an opportunity to demonstrate capability, commitment, and care. Camilla's reputation, strengthened by the resolution of the situation, reflected her dedication to both personal and institutional responsibility. As the days passed, the estate returned to its usual rhythm. Camilla continued her routines of morning walks, reviewing correspondence, and caring for the collection. The heirlooms, once the subject of concern, were now safely secured and fully documented. Camilla's attention to detail, calm leadership, and thoughtful communication had ensured a positive outcome, reaffirming her role as both custodian of history and steward of trust. In private moments, she often reflected on the broader meaning of the experience. The heirlooms represented not only the past, but also the continuity of responsibility, the connection between generations, and the enduring importance of careful stewardship. Camilla understood that her actions had implications beyond the immediate moment. They would shape how future caretakers approached their roles and how the public perceived the care of historical treasures. The resolution of the heirloom situation, while challenging, ultimately reinforced Camilla's confidence and sense of purpose. She had navigated scrutiny with patience and professionalism, maintained the integrity of the collection, and ensured that both history and trust were preserved. Through careful planning, transparency, and cooperation, she had turned a moment of uncertainty into an affirmation of her capabilities and dedication. By the end of this chapter, Camilla had not only safeguarded the heirlooms, but had also strengthened her role as a guardian, leader, and trusted member of the royal household. The experience had provided lessons in patience, diligence, and communication, all of which would continue to guide her in the years to come. She had emerged with renewed confidence, a deeper connection to the legacy she protected, and a clear understanding of the delicate balance between personal responsibility and public trust. After the revelation of the heirlooms, whereabouts, and the official acknowledgement of her careful stewardship, Camilla returned to her estate with a quiet sense of relief. The tension that had built over the previous days slowly began to lift, replaced by a renewed focus on her responsibilities. She understood that while the immediate challenge had been resolved, the experience had lasting implications for her role in the royal household, her relationship with staff, and her public reputation. The days ahead would require thoughtful action, careful communication, and continued diligence. Camilla spent the first morning after the resolution walking through her estate gardens. The early sunlight illuminated the neatly trimmed hedges and colorful flowers, and the fresh air seemed to carry away the remnants of anxiety. She allowed herself a moment of reflection, thinking not only about the heirlooms, but also about the lessons she had learned through the scrutiny and inspection process. Patience, attention to detail, and calm leadership had carried her through, and she recognized the value of these qualities in every aspect of her life. Back inside the house, Camilla began a thorough review of her collection and records. While every item had been accounted for, she decided to take additional measures to ensure clarity and transparency in the future. She updated the catalog with more detailed descriptions, photographs, and historical notes for each piece. She also created a new system for temporary storage and movement of heirlooms, so that no item could be mistakenly considered missing in future inventories. This process was both practical and symbolic, a demonstration of her commitment to ongoing care and responsibility. Camilla also made an effort to engage with her staff in a positive and reassuring way. She called a private meeting with her aides and household team, thanking them for their cooperation and composure during the Royal Guard's inspection and the subsequent review. She acknowledged that the process had been unusual and potentially stressful, and she emphasized the importance of teamwork, communication, and mutual support. Her words were met with gratitude, and the meeting strengthened both morale and trust within the household. Staff members appreciated her recognition, and many felt inspired by her calm and thoughtful leadership. Understanding that public perception remained an important factor, Camilla began a series of carefully planned communications. She offered interviews and statements emphasizing the historical significance of the heirlooms and her dedication to preserving them. She highlighted the stories behind the pieces, sharing anecdotes about the late queen, state ceremonies, and personal moments that added context and depth to the collection. By framing the narrative around care, history, and responsibility, Camilla was able to shape public understanding in a positive and respectful way. At the same time, Camilla focused on educational and cultural initiatives. She arranged for select heirlooms to be displayed in secure exhibitions at museums and historical institutions, accompanied by detailed descriptions and historical notes. These exhibitions allowed the public to engage with royal history in a meaningful way while ensuring that the items remained protected. Camilla personally oversaw the preparation and presentation of each piece, reinforcing her role as both guardian and educator. The exhibitions were met with widespread appreciation, and they helped solidify Camilla's reputation as a careful and thoughtful steward of history. While managing public perception, Camilla also prioritized her own personal growth and reflection. She spent time reading historical texts, studying archival materials, and learning more about the late Queen's life and contributions. This research deepened her understanding of the significance of her role and provided additional context for the heirlooms she cared for. Camilla found inspiration in these studies, gaining both practical knowledge and a stronger sense of connection to the legacy she was entrusted to preserve. The experience also led Camilla to consider long-term improvements in estate management. She consulted with experts on preservation techniques, security measures, and documentation practices, implementing changes that would benefit both her estate and the broader royal collection. Camilla took a proactive approach, ensuring that the lessons learned from the inspection and review would be integrated into routine practices. These steps were not only practical, but also demonstrated foresight, responsibility, and a commitment to excellence. Throughout this period, Camilla maintained her daily routines, balancing work with moments of relaxation and reflection. Morning walks, time spent in the gardens, quiet reading, and personal study helped her remain grounded and focused. She understood that her well-being was important not only for herself, but also for the people and treasures she was responsible for. By maintaining balance and composure, Camilla ensured that she could approach challenges thoughtfully and effectively, setting an example for her household and peers. The public response continued to evolve. Media coverage highlighted Camilla's careful handling of the heirlooms, her dedication to history, and her composure under scrutiny. Commentators praised her attention to detail, her calm demeanor, and her ability to navigate a potentially challenging situation with grace. Social media conversations and public discussions reflected admiration for her leadership, and the narrative shifted from initial concern to respect and recognition. Camilla's actions reinforced the idea that responsibility, integrity, and care were essential qualities in those entrusted with preserving history. In addition to professional and public responsibilities, Camilla also considered the personal and symbolic aspects of the heirlooms. She spent quiet afternoons revisiting the collection, reflecting on the stories, memories, and lessons each piece represented. Some items reminded her of joyful ceremonies, while others carried solemn significance, honoring moments of history and personal connection. Camilla recorded these reflections, adding notes to the catalog and creating a written legacy that would accompany the physical treasures. This process strengthened her sense of purpose and allowed her to connect more deeply with both the items and the history they represented. Camilla's approach to the aftermath was holistic, balancing care for the collection with attention to relationships, reputation, and personal growth. She continued to engage with staff, palace officials, historians, and cultural institutions, ensuring that her stewardship was both transparent and effective. She recognized that responsibility extended beyond the physical care of objects. It included education, communication, and the fostering of trust and understanding. Each action she took reinforced her role as a thoughtful and capable guardian. As months passed, the heirlooms became a symbol not only of royal history, but also of resilience, diligence, and careful leadership. Camilla's careful management and thoughtful communication ensured that both the public and palace officials viewed her as a trusted custodian. She maintained her routines, continued to educate herself and others, and implemented systems that would prevent similar confusion in the future. The estate regained its sense of calm and order, reflecting both the care of Camilla and the lessons learned from the previous events. The experience also deepened Camilla's connection to the late Queen's legacy. She felt a stronger responsibility to honor the memory and contributions of the Queen, understanding that the heirlooms were not simply objects, but embodiments of history, culture, and continuity. Camilla approached each day with renewed dedication, using the lessons of the past to guide her actions in the present. Her work became a form of homage, a way to ensure that the stories and values of the royal family were preserved for future generations. Camilla also reflected on the broader meaning of responsibility. She understood that leadership required more than authority. It demanded empathy, attention to detail, communication, and integrity. The heirloom incident had been a test not of her possessions, but of her character, her patience, and her ability to navigate scrutiny with composure. By approaching the situation thoughtfully and proactively, she demonstrated that responsibility was not merely a duty, but a practice of care, foresight, and respect. Throughout the process, Camilla maintained a sense of humility and gratitude. She recognized the support of her staff, the professionalism of the royal guard, and the cooperation of palace officials. She also appreciated the public interest and respect shown for her dedication. These acknowledgments reinforced her commitment to her role and inspired her to continue her work with careful attention and thoughtful reflection. The resolution of the heirloom incident became a turning point in Camilla's role within the royal household. It highlighted her ability to manage challenging situations, balance private and public responsibilities, and maintain trust and integrity. Camilla emerged from the experience with enhanced credibility, deeper insight into her responsibilities, and a renewed commitment to preserving history. Her reputation as a guardian of the royal legacy was strengthened, and her actions became a model for diligence, patience, and careful stewardship. In the long term, Camilla's approach influenced broader practices within the royal household. Documentation systems were improved, security measures refined, and educational initiatives implemented to highlight the historical significance of the collection. Camilla's example demonstrated the importance of proactive care, thoughtful planning, and transparent communication, ensuring that future challenges could be managed with confidence and professionalism. Even as time passed, Camilla continued to revisit the heirlooms with care and reflection. Each object carried stories that connected the present to the past, reminding her of the value of history and the responsibility of stewardship. She recorded personal insights, maintained detailed records, and shared knowledge with historians and cultural institutions, reinforcing both the preservation and understanding of royal heritage. These efforts created a lasting legacy, ensuring that the collection would be appreciated, respected, and safeguarded for generations to come. Camilla also dedicated herself to educating the public about the historical significance of the heirlooms. Through exhibitions, lectures, and curated displays, she shared not only the physical treasures, but also the stories, memories, and traditions associated with them. The public engagement was met with enthusiasm and respect, further solidifying her reputation as a thoughtful and capable guardian of history. Her efforts demonstrated that leadership involved both care for material objects and the sharing of knowledge, bridging the gap between private responsibility and public understanding. In her quiet moments, Camilla reflected on the lessons learned. She realized that challenges, even when unexpected or stressful, offered opportunities for growth, learning, and connection. The heirloom incident had tested her patience, judgment, and composure, but it had also reaffirmed her dedication, reinforced her skills, and strengthened her relationships. Camilla embraced these lessons, understanding that they would guide her actions in all aspects of her life and role within the royal household. By the end of this chapter, Camilla had successfully navigated the aftermath of the heirloom incident. She had safeguarded history, strengthened trust, enhanced her reputation, and ensured that lessons were learned and systems improved. Her actions reflected a balance of care, diligence, and leadership, demonstrating that responsibility was a practice rooted in attention, integrity, and thoughtful action. The estate regained its calm and order, the heirlooms were secure, and Camilla's legacy as a careful and dedicated guardian was firmly established.